Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another podcast. Welcome, Nadia El-Mouelhy. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here.
Yes, Nadia is the director of the Halal Certification Authority. And you are also, amongst other things, you are a PhD student, and you have recently completed a research and published a report which we co-authored, where you surveyed over 1,000 people, which is amazing. How was that journey?
It was great. It was great. We were definitely hoping for more,
Yeah.
but I think we got a really great number to get the data from.
Yes, we did. So I've got some, questions around that report. But first and foremost, based on the survey, how do Muslim consumers decide if a product is halal, especially if there is no halal logo?
One of the main mechanisms that was picked up in the data was that they predominantly look for manufacturing claims, which is something like vegetarian, veganism. Then they'll also check websites, check if somewhere in the FAQs or the frequent answered questions are saying that it's halal. And then they'll also do a verification on the ingredients, like a quick survey on the ingredients themselves.
Yeah, so there's a lot of research investigation that goes in. Well, what if it's got a halal logo on it? What does that usually mean?
Well, the data picked up, which was fantastic, that 90% actually rely on certificates, and just under that were the logos. So that's really good. Muslims are looking for that. What was even more interesting is that 60% were actually looking to manufacturing websites. And I think that's where the key is, and that's where the focus should be with enhancing that.
Okay. We'll come to that because I think that's a key point you made, that looking at manufacturer websites, particularly where there's no halal logo, it's like, well, how do I know? And then going to the manufacturing websites. And we'll delve into that a bit more. But before we do, just scanning over the results, what were some of the surprises?
I think one of the biggest surprises is that Hanafi and Shafi madhabs were the ones that scrutinised ingredients the most. We also had women that looked towards social media and family for advice, and men would go to scholars or imam or a knowledgeable person.
Right. So that's two surprises, which is very interesting. The Hanafi and the Shafi are more scrutinising. So I guess that's you're saying, would that be an example where the halal logo is there, but they'll still go and look at the ingredients?
It could possibly. It could possibly. It could be just if it's missing, that they're going onto websites, they're scrutinising the ingredients themselves. It could be that they're asking people. That behaviour, it just came up as the more actions a participant took, that's how it was based on recognising that data in the fact that it actually came up as Shafi and Hanafi scrutinising the most. And I will say on that is that males scrutinise more than females.
Wow.
So we could say that the Shafi and Hanafi male is the most scrutinising of the...
most scrutinising. So they're more likely to go check this and check that and ask this and ask that person. So they just want to do all these. I guess they have a whole lot of checks that they're more likely to do if they're a male Hanafi or Shafi.
Yes.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
Another point on that is the Sunni that has no madhab and the Hanbali, they relied more on social media and YouTube. So these are interesting.
So Sunni and
Hanbali.
Hanbali. Okay. So just for those, we will put the link to the report in the description section, because there's a lot of detail here that we won't be going into in this conversation. But we're seeing some patterns already. We're seeing some snippets already. And so the other surprise you mentioned was that the women sort of consult different to men.
Yes, and I guess the question is why. We would ask the question why. And what we can put it down to is men tend to have more connections with imams and scholars going to khutbahs on Fridays. It's probably that connection.
And access.
And females tend to rely on family and social media because that's what's accessible.
Yeah. So that's interesting too, different behaviour patterns with both the men and the women with regards to seeking. Okay. One statistics that stood out to me, but I was wondering what you think. Were you surprised that 41% of Muslims in Australia admitting to having no knowledge of the halal certification industry and how it works?
I think it wasn't a surprise to me. And I think the data actually showed that as much as it actually showed that there were 50% said that they did. But the data showed otherwise. So it was interesting, especially when we come to other sections when we're going to talk about meat, you'll start to show that those statistics really showed that the knowledge of halal is really not there.
Oh, okay. So you're saying that, certain people felt that they knew,
Yes.
had that knowledge, but based on the responses they were giving, it was evident that they didn't.
Yes.
So, okay. So, interesting. Overconfidence maybe, or we'll see this, but it's a complex industry at the end of the day as well. So I can understand the challenges in trying to understand it. But even so, I suppose when we talk about halal industry and halal certification, you do hear maybe it's a loud minority who are talking about it, or everyone has an opinion on it. So in a way, you feel like everyone knows about it, but the survey is showing otherwise, isn't it?
It's true. I genuinely thought that because you do hear that loud few, that I thought, oh gosh, this is going to bring about really, really scattered results. But it wasn't. Most rely on certificates, most rely on logos, and there's no question about it. And then there's the few that I would say, I think it worked out to be 6 to 10%. Based on that last question that you said, actually had knowledge of the industry, and it showed in the data.
Okay. So they said they've got the knowledge, and it was evident that they had the knowledge based on their responses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know, it seems. Just that social media is a big one as well, and there was some questions that alluded to social media and whether that people are influenced by it. But nearly half of the respondents said that they did get influenced by social media. That's quite big. I suppose, how reliable do you think social media is for information like this, and and what are the challenges around this space?
I mean, you've always got Chinese whispers, and are always. I think relying on social media isn't the greatest. But where you can rely on social media and where it's beneficial is when you are getting that information from a certifier or a manufacturer who holds the knowledge of that information, because unless you're seeing it and you have access to their ingredients and how it's made and the process, it's hidden from, say, a consumer, and not out of hidden because it's just they can't see how a product's made. So
they don't have access to all that information that a certifier might have.
Yes.
So, there was an example that you had mentioned to me about ice cream that was on TikTok, and they were saying that it's not halal. Can you tell us about that example?
Yes, I believe they were saying that there was Carmine in the ice cream, but in that flavour there actually wasn't any Carmine in that ice cream. Okay. So that's where social media doesn't do a justice. Yeah. It's not to say that, consumers don't want Carmine in, and some may, but...
How would that have happened? I'm not suggesting they had ill intent, but could it be that how would they have thought there was Carmine in it if there isn't?
I think because other flavours may have it, and they've just may thought that all of them do, or they it could just be maybe misinformation from a consumer line, even though that's not the intention of the company. Sometimes the consumer line people don't necessarily have, or just the way, actually, a better put, the way the consumer asks the question, the consumer line person may answer the question, but it's not to the intention of what the consumer thought. So sometimes it's not as clear.
It's not as clear. It could be the communication.
So they could respond saying Carmine's in our product, but it might not have been in the product that you thought it was.
That's a good example. So they might say we use Carmine in our products, but it may not be that particular flavour. And that person, because they didn't clarify it, that misinformation could have happened. Okay, so that's a very good example, because we're talking about something that was put on TikTok where it's saying this flavor, this color, say ice cream, it's got Carmine, don't have it. We'll talk more about Carmine later, but it's like, don't have it. But the product actually, or that particular flavor, doesn't actually have Carmine. So this is an example where social media could be doing harm because it's giving misinformation. And it could be, as we said, not ill-intended, but it can happen. Let's think of another scenario. Let's say there's a biscuit and you look at all the ingredients and all the ingredients look good to you and you think, oh yeah, it's halal. What could be a problem with that kind of thinking?
This is the problem that most consumers have, and everyone wants to be a digital auditor, being halal and within this digital age. However, just with the example of biscuits will move along a line and they may have an oil base or a fat that it's cooked on. This could be made from animal products. This isn't disclosed in the ingredients because it's not part of the product, but the processing aid that they're using to cook it may have it. So this is where there's where ill-informed information can be passed on, or when just consumers are looking at something, they're not seeing the process. So it's not just about the ingredients, it's the process.
It's the process. That's a very important part of it. The process, and I guess this is information that halal certifiers would have. They will see the process. They'll see what kind of oil is being used with the cooking, even though that oil is not included in the ingredients.
Absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, it definitely gets complex and nuanced, but it's good to have this insight. So that's good to know. Now, let's move to stunning. This is a big area, and it's stunning. The report shows widespread confusion about stunning. Almost half of Muslims were unsure whether stunning is compulsory in Australia. Can you tell us more about this? I guess, is it compulsory? And why? Do you have any idea why Muslims would think it's not compulsory?
I think, why it wouldn't be compulsory? I just think maybe they don't have the access to the information or wouldn't know to look for it, even though it is public. The Australian federal government requires that meat in Australia is stunned, and that information may not be available to all Muslims. Maybe some don't care, and some do, based on what information's been put into the community or social media.
What's fascinating, like a while back, I didn't know this. If you told me that all chicken are stunned in Australia, I would have no idea. I suppose I'm thinking about how it was overseas in my grandma's village where the stunning didn't exist. So you just assume that's how animals were slaughtered. Especially, I just want to clarify this too. So if a chicken is hand slaughtered, because we have people who want to eat only hand slaughtered chicken, what's the stunning stance on that with regulations?
So it'll either be gas stunned or electrical stunned. The accepted worldwide is electrical stunned. There's a lot of not conspiracy, but there's a lot of talk about the gas stunning, whether it's halal or not. I could honestly say that it's not an accepted practice by Muslim governments, but it is a practice. And whether I say that's halal or not, I wouldn't be the one that says that, but it would be, it is prevalent in domestic countries such as England, Australia. And when it was
gas consumers... Stunning or stunning?
Gas stunning.
Oh, okay.
So stunning has to...
It happens.
Yeah, it happens. But...
gas stunning, you're saying it's prominent in UK and
Australia. Absolutely. Okay. It's before the African Anik conversation that was in the media a while ago, people were just focused on, I just need hand slaughtered, but didn't realise that it was actually being stunned with gas, yes.
Yeah, so that's, again, I think it shows how kind of we can be removed as the Muslim community from what really happens, and the regulation, the fact that you said all chicken has to be stunned based on Australian government regulations. And this, we're talking about these chicken, let's say, are being exported to countries like Malaysia or Indonesia, and they're accepting of this, the fact that these chicken are being slaughtered this way, right?
So chicken in Australia isn't exported as much as, say, red meat. So It probably look, electrical stun is what's if it was going to be exported into Malaysia, Indonesia, and stuff like that. It's definitely electrical stun. If you go to an export certifier, they'll be accepting electrical stun.
Okay, you've mentioned red meat. I want to move on to that actually, because you did ask a question specifically about red meat and how people think they should be slaughtered, and how was it? What kind of responses did you get, and did that surprise you?
It didn't surprise me because, over the years I've heard the same thing over and over where they project what happens with chickens onto red meat. And what it is red meat under no circumstances is machine slaughtered. It's hand slaughtered. And so this is something that goes through the community for years and years, but it's hand slaughtered.
Yeah, and there was a high percentage who either didn't know or they thought they were actually machine slaughtered.
80%.
80%. Wow,
Yeah.
that is huge.
Yeah.
On such a fundamental aspect of slaughtering.
Yeah.
But you're not surprised, you said, based on
Not at
your
all.
understanding of the community. Yeah. Okay. That was, something that really stood out as well. So that's the slaughtering of the red meat. And like we said, they're all hand slaughtered, I guess more practical reasons than anything else.
Yes.
But it really did not get, we really picked up that within the Muslim community, a lot of people didn't realize that, which was very interesting. Let's now move on to some more specific ingredients. Like you've got Carmine and gelatin. They come up a lot. I think every
Always.
Muslim in Australia has heard about it. And we found that different madhabs have different views on these. And I think this is where a lot of confusion happens. I feel like people of one madhab don't even realize that another madhab accepts it.
Yes.
And so, what did you find in the survey regarding these two ingredients, firstly?
Well, gelatin, naturally, and I knew this was going to be the top ringer of the most haram or the most critical that a Muslim will look for. That went without saying. But Carmine, you could see, I think that was about 50% said this is haram. And then when we asked more about it, it came up with 11% that Carmine was an issue, which is interesting. But the reason why it's an issue is because you have Hanafis that don't want to, and that's not the only madhab, including Hanbali, they don't want to have Carmine in their food. Shafi, for instance, Malaysia, Indonesia, Shafi countries, they accept Carmine. And so often what happens is when you're in a supermarket, you'll see these products and you'll go, oh my gosh, this has got Carmine, it's been halal certified, I'm contacting the certifier, they don't know what they're talking about, I can't trust halal certification, which isn't true. What it is that product specifically is being exported to Malaysia or Singapore or say Indonesia or to a Shafi country where it accepts Carmine. And the reason why it has halal certification is because of export. And it's just flooding the same product into the domestic market. And we're really lucky as Muslims living in Australia, being such a small percentage, that we have such a gift of having such a huge array in our supermarkets. That is a lot of the supermarket is halal certified.
Yeah, wow. I just want to break this down because what you've said is really important and I think a lot of people won't know. So firstly, you mentioned that with Carmine, according to Shafi, or maybe one of the views within Shafi, and therefore places like Malaysia's predominantly Shafi.
Yeah.
If there is Carmine in a product, they will consider it to be halal.
Yes.
Therefore, when halal certifier in Australia exports to that country, it will have the halal logo on it because according to Malaysia, it's considered halal.
Correct.
So if that same product, let's say strawberry milk, was going to another country that's predominantly Hanafi, let's say Turkey, would they endorse that product as halal if it was going to Turkey?
They would make another product without that ingredient. Yes, right. And it would just be a different product line or a different product code. It would definitely have a different label. And that product may not be flooded into the domestic market because they may make less of it for the Turkey market and make more of it for the Malaysian market.
I see. Yeah, so they're basically conscious of what that particular country is considering halal. And we're talking here madhabs which are different schools of thought.
Yeah.
So I do think it's important to remind our audience that we need to respect the different views.
Yeah.
Because even when we're doing 5 daily prayers, we have difference of opinions with,
Yes.
the praying or wudu. We were having that
Absolutely.
conversation about what breaks your wudu. And, according to Hanafi, if you have a little bit of blood, your wudu is annulled. Whereas according to Shafi madhab, you could be bleeding quite a bit and it's still, your wudu is still valid. But we still say that, both of those are acceptable. So this kind of difference of opinions is obviously coming to to the madhabs with regards to food as well.
Yes.
And so we have to be conscious. So just because I may say, if I'm Hanafi and I say Carmine is not permissible, it doesn't necessarily I have to acknowledge that it's not the same, say, for Shafi madhab.
Yes, it's hard because you've got consumers that are probably coming from other countries where it's not acceptable. They come into Australia and they're like, it is not acceptable. So it's just probably maybe some are unaware, even though you gave that excellent example about wudu. Yeah. And again, the traveller, you can have Shafi or Hanafi as a Musafir, which way you want to go. These seem to be accepted ideals, or not ideals, but rights or practices. But when it comes down to Carmine, you will see opposing views, or this is haram. So it's the same. It's the same. Yeah. If one scholar says it's acceptable and the other says it's not, both are accepted until there's a unanimous decision, and it hasn't been made unanimous decision.
Yeah, and I guess when we're talking about a country like Malay, Muslim majority countries, you do have the religious scholars or the government who decides what's halal, and usually people are okay; they'll go with what the government says.
Correct.
And I suppose then you've got, in Australian context, Muslims from over 100 countries, and so there's a lot of different opinions. And on top of that, you mentioned that the products that are, coming into Australia for domestic, they're really being designed for export.
Absolutely.
And therefore, does that mean that a product can have Carmine and be considered halal, and a product that not have Carmine and be considered halal? Because if it's going to, say, Malaysia, would you have that situation?
Absolutely. What we do in a circumstance like this, and predominantly what I would do in my organisation, is probably the consumers don't see the certificate. They just see, it's halal. Yeah. But on the certificate, we actually say this is banned in certain countries, because if it's not acceptable, say Saudi Arabia doesn't want Carmine, we would write this is not acceptable in Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. So just in case that certificate went to Malaysia, but then it's been somehow sold somewhere else, or something of the kind, or somehow landed somewhere else other than the country that it's destined for, it's that person's protected in case they don't know what the ingredients are.
Right. And we said that a lot of these halal logos or endorsements or certifications are for export. Is there a reason why it's not for the domestic audience? Like, there's not a certification system purely for the domestic?
Oh, heading into this is a huge issue. Not an issue, it's an area of concern that's been brought up in the media recently with regards to domestic certification. I think because Australia is has export potential, we have all the products that people want. We've got agriculture. We've got a multitude of ingredients that can be sent everywhere. So that's why export certification is huge in Australia. Is there domestic certification? Yes, there is. And I think consumers get confused between export and domestic. Domestic is your local butcher, your restaurant, maybe your supermarket. I'm not talking about Coles and Woolies. I'm talking more about, a local supermarket that might be selling maybe Turkish goods or something like that. It's those products that are predominantly for domestic. The rest will be such as the ones that are in Coles or Woolworths or something like that, your yogurts, your cheese, your milks. These are all exported. These are all halal certified. So I'm not saying every single one, but predominantly I pretty much go into them and they are halal certified. You will find in that regard that that's where people get confused. It's not domestic. That what's in the supermarkets in Woolworths and Coles, this is for export. So I think that's something that
And I'm guessing this is from an economic perspective because the export, I guess, not the finances, but the export business is much, much bigger
It's
than
huge.
we're talking about 3% of the Australian population being Muslim. So therefore, it's designed for that purely, it sounds like, because of an economic perspective.
It's like if you've got a business, are you going to cater to 25% of the Muslims around the world, or are you going to do the 3%? Or you're going to do it as well with the 3%, but you're going to cater to the whole world. If you're going to enter into the business and want halal certification, you want to get your product out there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's beneficial that, yes, the domestic takes advantage of this, but, predominantly one would get certification because it's going into export markets.
Mm.
If you're going domestic, it would be specifically for the domestic, which is your restaurant, your butcher.
Another question I have is that there are some products that once upon a time we noticed that they had the halal logo on it, and now they no longer have it. So why is it that some manufacturers in the Australian context for, I guess, Australian Muslims, or I suppose why don't Australian Muslims see that halal logo in some products they once used to?
Yes, it happened in approximately 2012. There was a radio station, I think it was Ray Hadley.
Yes.
He was accusing very, very big brands of funding terrorism should they have halal certification. This is the first wave that we experienced in that industry, and a lot took it off as a result. And then obviously there was the anti-halal campaign that happened in 2014 and 15, which also caused another wave. But you don't see the logo as much as what you used to prolifically, especially in the 90s and the 2000s. It was
very common.
Yes.
So I guess I'm trying to think from the manufacturer's perspective. They are halal because I'm guessing these products are being exported to overseas. So they are, say, the ones that are halal, but when they're providing it to the local sort of consumer, they're removing that logo from the packaging so that they don't get the backlash. Is that correct? Or not?
Half right. So often the reason why, look, they may have a logo on and they may want to let the domestic market know. Predominantly, if they're an export and they're sending it export, the reason they have the logo on is because it's a requirement of that specific Islamic country. Right. If it's not a requirement of that Islamic country, they will most likely take it off.
Oh, okay. So some Islamic countries don't require the halal logo. I mean, they still want the certification, but it doesn't have to be on the packaging.
Correct.
Right. Okay. And yes, I suppose they're trying to, whether it's right or wrong, they're trying to reach out to as much consumers as possible, and therefore in the Australian, I guess, landscape, if they, especially after getting backlash like they did, they're trying to respond to that and deal with that.
They are. Can you imagine, usually when they're buying packaging, they'll buy a couple of years' worth. It's not something like they'll just buy a month's worth. They'll buy it in bulk. And so if there's a wave, you might have to go through a couple of years, and then you'll say, when this runs out, we're going to put the logo on. So we'll see what the next interesting wave happens. There's going to be a requirement in Indonesia that it definitely has to have a logo. I mean, it was there before, but this is, if you want to even enter into it, you'll have to have a halal logo. This will also
so that's
push
a new
out.
rule, is it?
It's a new requirement that you used to be able to send in, but you'll have to declare that your product is non-halal otherwise. So you need that logo now. And I think you'll have to have the Indonesian logo on as well.
Right.
So you'll see that'll start to wave out. There's other little things like, for instance, a change in the Gulf. They put a pharmaceutical standard, even Indonesia. And this hits Australia. So then all of a sudden you'll have all these pharmaceutical companies going, I need halal certification. At the moment, there's a huge cosmetic rise at the moment. And I believe that's because of Indonesia. Like their standards and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. As in the cosmetics that want halal certification, it's because of the changes that
just the changes that are made,
And
just makes it stronger, have more integrity within what's going to be received into Indonesia.
So it sounds like it's an area that's constantly on the change as well.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
Not rules, but expectations can change constantly.
Constantly.
One moment you don't need the halal logo, the next moment you need it, for example.
Yeah.
Or one moment the cosmetics may not need it, or they never thought, but all of a sudden they want it on that as well. So And then as, I guess, exporters from Australia, then Australian companies have to
comply,
think about this,
yeah.
and they have to comply, which is then when they have to come out and reach out to halal certifiers. So, wow, it does sound like there's a lot of navigating that needs to be done. That's happening with the exports. What is the export of halal certification?
It's about 30 billion
Yeah.
in meat and food and beverages and agriculture.
Yeah. So it's
it's
a huge part of the
Yeah.
economy. And therefore, I could see, unfortunately, let's say, but the Australian Muslim consumer is not a big part of that, or those pressures or priorities or those demands that are coming from the international platform are taking up a lot of energy. And the domestic consumer, like you said, that the domestic consumer is benefiting because there's all these halal products that are developing, that are being exported, but they're also made available for Muslims here.
It floods our industry in Australia. And if it wasn't for those export products, we would have higher prices in Australia. So it actually keeps our prices low.
Okay. Something that comes up, I guess, regularly is, should the halal certification industry, the domestic one in Australia, be unified? Or they say it should be unified. Now, this is something I can see that's easier said than done, just looking at other entities that exist in our community. But what are your thoughts on this?
Look, I think ideally for every Muslim, we all want one standard and one practice, because then we have uniformity and there's consistency. But in Australia, we're all from there's people coming from different countries, there's people coming from different madhabs, and then who is going to regulate? And let's say it's one body that we all like, let's say it's ANIC or it's AFIC or it's another body. Not everyone wants to be following those. So you're going to have that problem no matter what. So who is going to be that body that regulates that? And that's where the definitive, you need a government really in a situation like that. I'm not saying that that's the only way, but because we're in Australia, you do not have unification on one body. And that's where the issue lies. That's
where the issue lies, because when we look at some of these Muslim countries that do have a body, regulating body, they're all under the government,
correct,
right? So, whether it's Malaysia or Indonesia, Pakistan, they're under Turkey, Saudi, they're all under the government. So then we're expecting a regulating body in Australia to do this without the government. I think that's a sentiment that exists out there, but that comes with its challenges, because I'm guessing then if you have this regulating body, like you need that accountability or consequences if you don't follow that, but then that body doesn't really have authority.
Correct.
So there's a lot of challenges in that space.
A lot.
I believe. It reminds me a lot of the, imams in Australia, because if you go to somewhere like, I'll give the example of Turkey, like to be an imam, you have to have done certain qualifications, and then the government recognizes you, you're registered as an imam, then you're assigned to a mosque. Again, the government does it. Whereas in the Australian context, I can build a mosque if I had money. And say my husband, let's say, for a male purpose, if he was a charismatic speaker, he was able to lead the prayers, he could easily be assigned as an imam, even though he may have zero qualifications as an imam.
Correct.
And there's nothing, and if you can draw the crowd, it works. There's no registration, there's no membership. There is a membership with the ANIC, but it's not binding. It's good that they've created that initiative and started that initiative and trying to have that membership going, but it's not binding, which means that I could still be an imam at a mosque without being a member of, that particular body. So does that sound similar with the halal certification industry?
It's exactly similar, and it's no different to when we're fasting. Are they following the moon? Are they following the country that they come from? It's the same problem that we've got here in Australia.
That's a good example
mirrors the
too.
same situation.
Because one body can say it's Ramadan starts this day, another one says it doesn't starts this day, and another one says a day later.
Yeah. And they're emphatic about it. And you can't change it.
You can't change it.
Exactly.
And that's a very good example.
So even if a body starts and they're going, yep, this is what we're going to do, and with every excellent intent, alhamdulillah, you'll have people that are totally against it. You'll have people that don't even agree to it just because it's based on their own their own filters and their own experience and their own background.
I suppose this is one of the challenges of being a minority Muslim, that it's very different to, countries where there's majority Muslims. And, this is one of the areas that we need to navigate.
Yeah. And just even on the data, just based on that, you had a lot that don't care for that. So even if you do put that in place, there's a lot that don't actually have the interest for it. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, it goes kind of to that sort of loud minority. We have to respect their opinions as well. But there were a lot of people who says, as long as the halal logo is there, I'm okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Nadia, did you have any last thing that you wanted to say?
I would like to say stay tuned, because the data that we've issued today in the report is the raw data, but we've actually made some comparative analysis. We've gone deep into the data, and there's interesting results that we've mentioned a little bit today, but there'll definitely be a next instalment.
Wow, looking forward to it. Sounds very interesting. Thank you, Nadia, for your time. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Take care and see you next time. Assalamu alaikum.